The Dershow.
I know for a fact that there were great opportunities and great offers made, and that Arafat has said if he accepted, no matter what the offer was, no matter how generous, he would have been killed.
Okay.
And that's probably true. Just the way the grandfather of the current head of Jordan was killed when he tried to accept a peace plan, but Rabin was also killed. Alan, so I agree with you.
But Alan, we're going back. Like, yes, that was number one. That was 24 years ago. There was more history that happened since. Number one. Number two, if you read the most reliable accounts of what happened at Camp David. So you can all read Deborah Sontag's July 2001 article about the failure at Camp David in Taba. You can read Jeremy Pressman's article in 2003.
And I can give you 2 articles for everyone you mentioned.
Security. You can read Rob Malley's book, and you should
can read Rob Malley's book. I will give you objective assessment.
Definitely
Rob
read
Malley.
And you should definitely read The Case for Israel.
Okay.
You should definitely read The Case for Israel and put them all together, and you'll arrive at, I think, a more nuanced conclusion. But also the main point is that that was an episode. There were chances since then, and what I'm trying to get you to, Alan,
2007 to 2008.
My brother, let me just make this point. I'm just trying to get you to admit that the catastrophe is mutually created.
No, I won't admit it, and I'm not your brother. And the
Cousin?
Palestinians, the Palestinians had an opportunity to have a state during the Peel Commission in 1947, 1948, 1964, 2000, 2001, 2007, and they blew it every single time. This is not mutual. The Israelis wanted a 2-state solution. Now many of them don't. They don't have trustworthiness. But they wanted it, and they were prepared to give up a great deal. And the Clinton parameters were acceptable to most Israelis. And Arafat simply refused to accept them because he feared for his own life. So no, I don't think the fault is in any way mutual. I think that it lies 95% on the side of the Palestinian leaders, not the Palestinian people, the Palestinian leaders, and 5% on behalf of the Israeli leaders. But what's the use of allocating responsibility? Let's see how we can move forward. What's your suggestion for moving forward?
Let's talk about moving forward.
Okay.
So we're obviously right now in the middle of a war, and you just published an article in the Wall Street Journal entitled "Israel has proved that Jewish blood is no longer cheap."
That's not my most recent article. My most recent article is today in the Wall Street Journal on Mamdani promising to arrest Netanyahu.
Okay. We'll have you back to talk about New York politics, but let's focus on this.
Okay.
What's the argument in that article?
Which one? The most recent
one? The one I asked you about.
Oh, the article. The article that you asked me about tries to explain why Israel has changed its rules of engagement in this war. And it goes back in history, and it demonstrates how cheap human blood was for so many centuries. Jewish blood was for so many centuries. And this was an attempt to try to make it clear to the enemies, the people who conducted October 7th. And remember, the recent events didn't grow out of a vacuum. They grew out of the greatest massacre of Jews, rapes, murders, beheadings since the Holocaust. And Israel had to send a message that Jewish life is not cheap and that you pay a heavy cost when you take Jewish life in this way. Having said that, they still had the best ratio in the history of modern warfare, the best ratio of civilian to combatant deaths of any country fighting a terrorist war. Even if you take only Hamas's figures and totally ignore all of Israeli figures, every single one of them, you still get a ratio of less than 3 to 1. That is 3 civilians for every combatant. The NATO ratio is approximately 7 to 1. Ratio of other countries that have fought terrorist wars of this kind is more like 10 to 1. Israel goes to such enormous efforts to try to reduce civilian casualties, not because they're such wonderful, terrific, great people, because it benefits them to reduce civilian casualties. Every time a civilian dies, it hurts their cause tremendously, and it helps the Palestinian cause tremendously. So Israel has every incentive to minimize the number of civilian casualties. And have they done an effective job? They could do a better job. Of course they can. You can second guess almost any military action. And what they've done is they said they're going to get every terrorist. They're going to get everyone who participated in the October 7th massacres. And have they overdone it? Reasonable people could argue that they have. Israel's a democracy. As you know, every single Saturday night, there are demonstrations against Israel and against the Israeli leadership. Israel is a vibrant democracy, and it will change when there are elections, and you're going to see it make, obviously, overreactions to events like October 7th. Who would not have an overreaction to October 7th? You think the United States didn't have an overreaction to Pearl Harbor? You think the United States didn't have overreactions to other kinds of events that occurred? Of course you do in history, and that's what a democracy is all about. So you can't, what I argued in my op-ed is you can't understand Israel's actions today out of the context of history. That Jewish life has been so cheap. During the Holocaust, for example, we know how many Jews were killed and how few Germans actually paid the price for it. Germany was rebuilt by the Marshall Plan almost immediately. Japan was rebuilt by the comparable to the Marshall Plan. And the perpetrators of the Holocaust, some of the hands-on people, were persecuted, prosecuted, but others were not. And I think for many Israelis, October 7th marked a very important day, and they said, look, we're not going to allow Jewish life to be cheap. We're going to have to respond, and we're going to respond forcefully. We're going to not target civilians, and I challenge you or anybody else to find me one instance where the Israeli army deliberately targeted a civilian with no military function and no military goal and wasn't punished for it. Why wouldn't they be punished for it? What does Israel benefit when it kills a civilian, when it kills a child, when it kills a woman? It only loses when that happens. Sometimes it's necessary. When you have 25 terrorists hiding in the basement of a hospital or hiding in the basement of a school, using civilians as human shields, then the Israeli army has two choices. Let them continue to stay there and operate and kill Israelis, or make a cost-benefit calculus. And the law has created an algorithm for evaluating that legally. It's called the rule of proportionality. That is, every country has an obligation, every military, to look at the military value of the target, analyze how many potential civilians could be killed or hurt by the attack on the target, and then come to a conclusion that the military value of the attack is warranted by the number of collateral civilian injuries or deaths. That's the law of war, and that's the law that every country operates under. Some do it with more sensitivity to civilian life, some do it with less sensitivity. But that's the law. It doesn't say you can't ever kill a civilian. If it said that, then every country would just use civilians as human shields and preclude themselves from being ever defeated militarily.